My name is Maya Sterling. I am 28 years old, and this is the story of how I bought the debt of the people who threw me away. Sweetie, grab us some coffee while the adults talk. That was the first thing my mother said to me in 15 years. She didn't even look up from her phone. She just flicked her wrist, gesturing toward the corner of the boardroom, as if I were a ghost. Or worse, the help. My father was no better. He was busy adjusting his silk tie, nervously checking his reflection in the glass window of the Sterling Hotel's penthouse suite. They had walked into my building, sat at my conference table, and assumed I was the secretary. I didn't say a word. I didn't correct them. I just stood up, walked over to the coffee station, and poured 3 cups, black for him, 2 sugars for her. And I placed the mugs down on the mahogany table with a soft clink. Then I walked to the head of the table, the CEO's chair, and sat down. The silence that followed was louder than any scream. My mother froze, her hand halfway to her cup. My father blinked, confused, his eyes finally focusing on the woman sitting across from him. "Excuse me?" My mother scoffed, her voice trembling with that familiar mix of arrogance and fear. "That seat is reserved for Mr. Sterling's successor. You can't just—" "Mr. Sterling doesn't have a successor," I said, my voice steady, cold. "He has an owner." I opened the leather folder in front of me. "Shall we begin with the eviction notice? Or would you prefer to discuss the $3 million you stole from the company accounts in 1999? To understand why I enjoyed the look of terror on their faces, you have to go back to the winter of 2008. I was 13. We lived in a sprawling estate in Lake Forest, Illinois. From the outside, we were the picture-perfect American family. My father was a respected investment banker. My mother was the queen bee of the local charity circuit. And then there was my little sister, Brittany, the golden child, the prodigy, the one who could do no wrong. Me? I was the spare, the mistake. But behind the velvet curtains, the walls were rotting. My parents were drowning in debt. They were status poor, spending money they didn't have to impress people they didn't like. They needed a scapegoat, coin they needed to cut costs. And most importantly, they needed to protect their reputation when a diamond ring went missing from a charity auction my mother hosted. It was insurance fraud. I know that now. They had pawned the ring to pay off a gambling debt my father owed, but they couldn't admit that, so they blamed the 13-year-old girl who was always quiet, always in the background. I remember the night perfectly. It was snowing. Not the romantic kind of snow, but the biting Chicago wind that hurts your face. My father dragged me out the front door by my arm. He threw 2 trash bags onto the icy driveway. "You are a thief," he spat, his breath visible in the cold air. "And we don't harbor criminals in this house." I begged. I cried. I told them I didn't take the ring. My mother stood in the doorway, holding Brittany's hand. Brittany was smirking. She knew. They all knew. "Go to your Uncle Will's," my mother said, her voice devoid of emotion. "If he'll even take a stray like you." They slammed the heavy oak door. The sound echoed like a gunshot. I stood there for an hour shivering, waiting for them to open it, to say it was a mistake. They never did. Uncle Will was the black sheep of the family. My parents called him a loser because he drove a beat-up Ford truck and wore flannel shirts. They laughed at him at Thanksgiving dinners. But Uncle Will had a secret. He wasn't poor. He was what you call stealth wealth. He didn't buy fancy cars, he bought real estate. He bought parking lots, warehouses, and failing hotels. He was a silent tycoon. When I arrived at his doorstep, half frozen and broken, he didn't ask questions. He just made me soup and gave me a warm bed. Over the next 15 years, Will didn't just raise me, he trained me. He saw that my anger was a fuel, but he taught me to refine it. "Revenge is sloppy, Maya," he used to say while we reviewed spreadsheets at the kitchen table. "Justice is a balance sheet. Don't get mad. Get leverage." I didn't go to prom. I went to property auctions. I didn't go to college parties. I learned forensic accounting. I legally changed my last name to his, Sterling. By the time I was 22, I was running his operations. By 25, I was the unseen CEO of the Sterling Group. My parents? They continued their downward spiral. They refinanced the house 3 times. They took out predatory loans. They lived on credit, maintaining the illusion of wealth while the foundation crumbled. Uncle Will passed away 6 months ago. It broke me, but in his will, he left me everything, including one very specific portfolio he had been building for a decade. The debt portfolio of my parents. He had bought their mortgage. He had bought their car loans. He had even bought the personal loans they took out from shady lenders. He owned them, and now I owned them. Why, that brings us back to the boardroom. My father was turning red, a vein bulging in his forehead. "Maya, is that you?" "It's Miss Sterling," I corrected, not looking up from the documents. And we have a lot of ground to cover. My sister Brittany, who had been busy setting up her ring light to live stream her grief over her rich uncle's passing, finally looked up. Wait, so Uncle Will left the hotels to you? That's impossible. Mom said he was crazy. We're the next of kin. Will left his assets to his daughter, I said. I was adopted by him legally 10 years ago. You aren't next of kin, you're strangers. My mother found her voice. She tried to play the mother card. It was pathetic. Her eyes welled up with fake tears, the same performance she gave the police when she accused me of stealing that ring. Maya? Darling, she whimpered, reaching across the table. We did what we had to do. We were protecting you. We knew Will could give you a better life. We sacrificed our happiness for yours. I laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. Is that what you call it? A sacrifice? Let's look at the numbers, Susan. I projected a spreadsheet onto the smart glass wall behind me. In 2010, you took out a second mortgage to pay for Brittany's pageant fees. You defaulted in 2012. The bank was going to foreclose, but a mysterious holding company stepped in and bought the debt, allowing you to stay. That was Will. I swiped to the next slide. In 2015, Dad crashed the Porsche while drunk. The lawsuit would have bankrupted you. Another anonymous donor settled the case out of court. But that was Will. I stood up and walked slowly around the table. For 15 years, the man you called a loser paid for your lifestyle. He kept a roof over your head. He kept you out of jail. And you never once called him. You never once visited. Until he died and you thought you could pick over his bones like vultures. The room was deadly silent. My father slumped in his chair. He knew. He finally understood the magnitude of the trap they were in. Brittany, being Brittany, didn't get it. Okay, fine, she snapped. So you're rich now. Good for you. Just cut us a check for our share of the estate and we'll leave you alone. We need $5 million. Minimum. I stared at her. You don't understand, do you? There is no check. There is no money for you. I slid 3 thick envelopes across the table, one for each of them. Open them, I commanded. They tore them open. My father's hands shook as he pulled out the paper. This is a foreclosure notice, he whispered. Correct, I said, leaning back against the desk. You haven't paid your mortgage in 6 months. As the owner of the note, I'm exercising my right to foreclose. You have 30 days to vacate the premises. My mother gasped. You can't do that. It's our home. We've lived there for 30 years. It's my house, I said. And I have a new tenant lined up. Me? I've always liked the architecture, even if the memories are bad. I plan to gut it, maybe turn your walk-in closet into a kennel for my dogs. Brittany pulled out her paper. It was a lawsuit. Defamation, I explained before she could ask. For the past 5 years, you've been selling stories to tabloids about your troubled runaway sister to gain sympathy followers. I've documented every lie, every fabricated interview. I'm suing you for every penny you've made off my name. And since you spent it all on designer bags, I'll be garnishing your wages for the next 20 years. My father stood up, furious now. I am your father. You owe me respect. You ungrateful little... I owe you nothing. I slammed my hand on the table. The noise made them jump. I owe you nothing, I repeated, lowering my voice to a dangerous whisper. I worked 18-hour days while you played golf. I built an empire while you built a house of cards. You threw me away like garbage. Well, guess what? I'm the landfill now, and I'm collecting the trash. I pressed the intercom button on the table. Security. Well, please escort the trespassers out of the building. 2 large security guards entered the room. My family didn't scream. They didn't fight. They just looked small. As they were being led out, my mother turned back one last time. Her mask of perfection was completely gone. She looked old, tired. Maya, she croaked. Where are we supposed to go? I looked at her, and for a split second, I remembered the 13-year-old girl standing in the snow, begging to be let back inside. I remembered the cold. I remembered the fear. I picked up my coffee, the one I had poured for myself. I took a slow sip. I hear Uncle Will's old place is vacant, I said. It's a bit drafty and the heating isn't great. But if you work hard, maybe you can afford the rent. I'll give you the family discount. I paused, smiling for the first time. First month in security deposit up front, cash only. The doors closed. I turned my chair around to face the window, looking out over the Chicago skyline. The snow was falling again, just like it did 15 years ago. But this time, I was on the inside. It was warm in here, and the coffee, it tasted like victory.